I was not really expecting 86 to go this direction. I have way too much stuff going on in my head right now. Episode 11 of 86 was absolutely fantastic, and a continuation of just these gut punches that seems to continue to hit with this series. And yeah, where do I start? There's a lot to go over. I guess we should just kind of go chronologically through the episode. Like I said before, I was totally expecting this entire episode to focus on Lena and essentially the repercussions he had to face, and I thought they were going to leave the rest of the 86 just as is, and then going to the next core with what they left off as. But no, this was seemingly a wrap up of their story. Like, we are concluding at this point, they're done. All signs, unless some kind of miracle happens and they pull some stupid stunt with the next core, their story's ended at this point. At least, again, at least we've pretty much fully confirmed that Shin is gone, at least, or at least has been harvested. But yeah, the episode opens up like right where we left Fido. That on the 30th of October, they are in a battle and they have pretty much lost all their juggernauts except for Shin's. The Undertaker is still functioning, and so they survive this battle, but they lose Fido, and they've lost all their juggernauts except for the Undertaker. And they've lost all their supplies as well, most of their supplies, and so they're left to pretty much be toted around by the Undertaker, and they decide they're going to take turns functioning. And I totally knew what direction this is going. It's like, well, whatever we get into a fight, whoever's riding is going to fight. And I'm like, yeah, but Shin's the only one that knows when they have to fight, and he's totally going to say, well, let me take over. And sure enough, they do that. But no, before then, they actually drop by another town, and they end up finding a school. And this is the point in which we get Kurina basically being able to experience what a school is. And it was really cute, kind of having Anju kind of act out what they would do at school. Heard a couple people note that on the chalkboard itself, there's a lot of writing about peace and the future, which is, kind of one of those unsettling truths of this world, of this idea that people were hoping for something and obviously did not achieve that. They, in a sense, lost the ruins of the old world as they're kind of burning the books and the workbooks that were there. Essentially, as the burning of essentially somebody's past, somebody's hopes and dreams that were kind of left behind because of what has happened throughout this world. At this point, Anju is carrying on in the Juggernaut and everybody else is being towed. And they also kind of noted the idea that, or at least Theodo kind of notes the idea that the Undertaker is the scariest one. Why does it have to be the one that's still active? Because it's so like tightly tuned and so many of the regulators are removed because of Shin's ability to ride these things, that it's kind of scary to ride it. But yeah, Anju's taking the head, and at some point, obviously, Shin says, hey, let me take over, I'm bored. And she's like, okay, that's fine. And then sure enough, he detaches and runs off because he knows that there is a threat up ahead and they're not going to be able to avoid it. And so he goes out there alone to fight it. And of course, that does not stop anybody else. They all decide to rush in there as well. And it's right at the right time because Shin is kind of disabled at that point. His Juggernaut fails, and they're all giving cover fire, but it's not looking good. And the interesting thing that happens right here is we get a brief glimpse of one of the Legion. And I'm assuming this Legion that's calling out to Shin is possibly the one that's doing the artillery fire. Don't really know for sure, though, but he's hearing a voice. And this voice specifically is screaming out that he'll kill anything. Peasant, old person, child, anything to protect his princess. And we get a very brief, like a fragment of a single frame of what looks like a princess. It's like a girl that has a cloak that a royalty would wear. And I guess the interesting thing about this particular girl is that she is not an Alba. She has dark color hair. And the assumption that this is portraying here is that there is obviously somebody that is a part of the Legion that was a soldier protecting their princess, but also the idea that this kind of insinuates that the princess that was in the Magnolia Empire could have been a non-Alba. which is not too much of a shocker. I mean, that is kind of something I can see this totally going in a direction of, is the idea that, the Alba essentially took over the throne and thus created a supreme race of the Alba, and everybody else was kicked out. But more so in the idea that it is kind of an extra twist to everything, and the idea that there was a princess that was non-Alba in this kingdom, and thus that would, would push the idea of the throne currently of the kingdom being pretty much uninherited, so to speak. Which then again kind of pushes the idea of at what point was this entire history rewritten, and why is it so accepted across the board and not common knowledge to at least Lena's father at some point. So yeah, there was a lot of emphasis put on this particular legion. It could have just been there just to signify this possible princess that was once in the kingdom. If the princess is still alive is a big question mark. She could possibly be dead already, but it did technically put a lot of emphasis on this particular person and his face, so I'm assuming he's probably going to be somebody they're going to have to face later on. But was definitely an interesting little Easter egg kind of shoved in the middle of all this combat and everything that was happening. Of course, following this, pretty much everybody looks like they've been down at some point. Artillery fire, explosions. Pretty much everybody else besides Shin was actually shown on the ground and seemingly gone. And then equally, Shin, pretty much, he did hesitate to grab his firearm. I guess he just decided at that point he was going to let himself be harvested, which is curious. I totally thought that he would, if anybody, would be unwilling to let himself get taken, but he decided to let himself get taken, which is curious. I figured it would be a thing with him trying to protect everybody else. He would waste all of his bullets and then be unable to, but it just seems like based on that shot, he just chose not to. After everything that happened with Lena, we cut back to Shin. And again, this legion is coming down upon him. It kind of cuts to white. He is a child again in front of his brother. His brother has a book and he drops it, and he's in a kind of a knight's outfit and, comes to take his brother away, and they both leave together. And then it cuts back to where he got up from, and there is a body laying there, which is, we assume, is Shin's, and his head is completely scratched out, so it implies that was his body being left behind. He's being taken off to the Legion. So yeah, we are establishing at this point that Shin has been harvested, and again, that's the big shocker for me, definitely. Again, I thought this was going to be a lot about Lena and him getting together and them going off and fighting something, but it does seem like at this point everything is pointing to Shin and the rest of the 86 are, or at least the Shin's group, are now being harvested. They're all no longer alive, unfortunately. So that was again a big shocker for me. I didn't really think the story was going to take this direction, but it did. So here we go. And then, of course, on the opposite end, we had Lena. Finally, she has been put under house arrest for everything that she's done, and she took the opportunity to go and visit the 86, and she's kind of at the base that they were staying at. She's looking around. She ends up speaking to Lev, who, of course, is their engineer guy. He kind of lays out the fact that, he is actually Alba, and he dyed his hair when his wife and daughter were enlisted into the 86. He decided to join them, dyed his hair so that he'd, no longer be an Alba, and was trying to help them get to the point which they would be released, but they died on the battlefield. And he said that once he found out that Shin was able to hear their voices, he actually asked him, have you heard anybody out there calling out for an idiot that couldn't protect his wife and child? And he said that he'd never heard it, but which kind of eased his pain. But he also stated that whenever they send out a group to their final march, he always tells them that that he is Alba, and that if they want to kill him, they're allowed to. And they never do. And they didn't this time. So that was a pretty heartbreaking, cool, small little story for him. It's not a deep and crazy long story, and I thought it was just short enough to be powerful. Really did like it. And then, of course, Lena goes into their barracks and finds a book that was left behind by seemingly the entire group, which includes the picture that Theodo drew for her, which is the pig girl. And I totally thought this was going to be the point in which we'd had my prediction, which I was hoping that they would have some point where Theodo would draw a picture of Lena, not a pig lady, but actually try to draw her as he thinks that she actually looks like and not as a pig, and that he would have drawn it and it would have been like really close to her. But unfortunately, no, it's just the pig picture and little nice little parting words from each one of them. Not really parting words, but really them just kind of saying, here's the cat. Please take care of it. All this kind of stuff was really cute. They left a picture of all of them for her, so that now she actually has a face to put to all the names, which was really sweet. Just a really, really heartbreaking little scene with, the music kicking in the background. Definitely got me emotional for the scene. This is kind of that moment where she finally, again, gets to put a name or a face to all the names and all the people that she's lost over this time that she was trying to create her own her own faces to them, and now she has the actual faces to them, so she can see them as people at this point. Really, really strong scene. Which all leads us to our big question: well, where are we going from here? Like I said, every one of my predictions at this point has just been thrown away. So I have to start over scratch. It's really leading it at this point that she's going to have to go out there and possibly with a new platoon, go out there and essentially get them back. This is going to be something that's going to be haunting her going forward, which is, I guess, part of the heartbreak of this story, unfortunately, is the fact that those that you have fought alongside become your enemy and you have to take them down. But I think she's going to be haunted by this for some time, and she's going to have to fight back. Now, the big question is it going to be from back behind the enemy or back behind the lines of the 85 again, or is it going to be out there? I assume she's going to go back to controlling the next 86 and then thus have to fight to essentially put Shin to rest and the rest of them to rest. But it's a big question mark at this point because it does feel like a defeat. This entire season does feel like a defeat, not in a bad way. It feels like a defeat in the idea that we've had all these people that we have grown to like, and we fought alongside them for so long, along with Lena, and to have them all basically wiped out and a reset essentially with the next core, it's hard. It's hard to really kind of stomach. Like, am I going to care about the next group that she controls? Are they going to be able to sell me on the idea that she's going to have a new group that she works along with? Now, granted, we do have a lot of growth in Lena in this time. So going into the next course, she's going to be more stern. She's going to be more quick about things. She's going to be less hesitant. She's going to make those connections better because she's spent this time with the 86. But is it going to be different? Is it going to be a team that we're going to want to connect to? That's the big question. It's like the idea of a writer saying, here's a bunch of people, bond with them. They're gone now. Here's a new one, like these ones too. It's kind of hard to accept the second dish, but it does beg that question. I assume they're going to have her get a new group, and that new group is going to have to face Shin, which is going to be seemingly an impossible task. I don't see Shin being easily as taken down as his brother was, but still, that seems to be the route they're going. But also, I kind of see them diving into this whole aspect of who this other princess is, and possibly the idea of the Alba not being the true rulers of this particular kingdom. So the other big, course, obvious question is Shin really dead? Is this a fake out? Could it possibly be that Shin and the rest of them are still alive? Did something stupid happen that just magically saved their lives? Some random other group showed up and protected them and kept them from dying. Some outside survivors that came in and rescued them. I don't know. I think that's going to be really cheap if that's the case. If Shin is still alive, that's going to be really cheap. I would probably get very angry at that. That would be not to bring up old horses here and soft spoilers for All Noah Zero. Technically the same thing they did with that, but yeah, I hope they don't. I hope they don't. It's both Sawano Hiroyuki that does beg the question. The other question is what's going to be the special. They did state that I think that on the 27th they were going to have a special, which is called, I think, the Red Poppy Blooming in this Battlefield. Is that going to be a goofy episode? Is it going to be some kind of mid-story? Is it going to be possibly a prequel story. I know that there's a lot of gossip about there being a prequel story that they did not include with the adaptation, and they could go into that. We'll have to see. I'm curious what that'll end up being, and if that's going to end up bridging things or just creating more questions at this point. But again, that does beg the question of, if they are all dead, does that mean we're not going to get Andrew's story? I know I'm stuck on the Andrew story, but it was pretty obvious on that whole backscarring what was going on. But yeah, just a really overall amazing episode. Like I said, love it to death. I'm going to be hurting for the next essentially 3 months until we get the second core of this season, but still was fantastic. Easily another one of the greatest series of this season, and I love it to death. We'll be doing a full review of the first parter, and I will release that in a video later. But I hope you guys enjoyed my week-to-week impressions, and I thank you guys so much for supporting me throughout each of these weeks and tuning in for these impressions. I hope you guys enjoyed my speculations, even though it turns out most of them are wrong. It's still fun to speculate. It's fun to be together with you guys and enjoy the hurt together and embrace one another. But again, hope you guys enjoyed. As always, if you did like this video, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. And to look forward to our next season of episode-by-episode impressions. But yeah, y'all take care.